Hello, lovely people, to the place where we make sense of Romanian. Today we're going to cover one of the topics that probably doesn't make any sense for you, but that's exactly why we're here, to build our path into learning Romanian. And in order to do that, today we have a topic that may seem confusing, as I said at first, but we're talking about moods, and there are some interesting facts about them. They might not be the most obvious topic in grammar to think about, but they are extremely used in Romanian. They are topics that you want to learn and you will learn at some point if you speak Romanian or your goal is to speak Romanian. That is, for example, subjunctive, that is, for example, participle, and other weird topics like this. Maybe if you have already an A1 or an A0, if you're just started learning Romanian, you might know about the infinitive. And that is indeed one of the moods. And that's exactly what we're gonna mention today. Last time we talked about tenses and we made a tier list out of them. And we also ranked them based on difficulty. We're gonna do something extremely similar today with moods. Also, if you find this content useful, give it a like and subscribe down below. We're making videos weekly and we talk about different grammar topics, tips, tricks, and then obviously culture videos that you need in order to understand Romanians and Romanian better. Last but not least, I want to say that moods in Romanian are a topic that you might consider as well when you try to think differently in a language. What I mean by that is obviously from English to French to Romanian to Spanish to Chinese to Russian, you have a different way of thinking, and moods for Romanian, as well as cases, for example, bring a new way of thinking. In this case, about verbs. So without any further ado, let's polish this stuff out and get into it. As I said last time, we were talking about tenses and we had the ranking based on the level when you should learn it and the difficulty, how long it takes to learn it. We will probably use the same idea this time, where I'm going to talk about A1 to B1 and difficulty easy to difficult. Well, you'll find all those tenses very interesting because all of them that we talked about last time actually fit into the indicative mood, which is right here, the second one on this list. Next time, as you might know, we'll talk about voices, but until then, let's focus on moods. Now, a little caveat in what moods really are. I said in the intro, they are related to the way you think about a topic or a verb. So a bit more detail about moods is that you have a verb, an action, right? Verbs are actions. And you don't change the tense or the time you speak about it. For example, when you talk about tenses, you have past, present, future. You have a timeline and you put tenses accordingly, and they describe an action, if it's finished, if it will happen, if it's happening right now, and so on. But with moods, it's not that. It's actually what that verb indicates. Is more of, let's say, you could think about it, since we're talking about moods, you could talk about the feeling of the verb. Moods actually tell you right from the name what they are going to express. So if we have, for example, conditional, it talks about a condition. Something would happen if. If describes the condition. Imperative then describes something that must happen. It's imperative. And that's why it's used, for example, when you shout at somebody or you give a command. More on that later. Right, so first, as we did last time, let's talk about what each mood looks like, and then we'll talk about what they mean. So when we have the infinitive, You see here the short infinitive merge, which is basically extremely similar to a merge, but it's in the infinitive form. Pot merge pe jos acasă. In English that translates to I can walk or go by foot home. Infinitive merge. Indicative merg acasă. Indicative, right? It's everything we have talked about in the tenses lesson. So all of those tenses go under the indicative mood, including merg, I go home. That's present tense, part of the indicative mood. The imperative, mergi acasă, usually you will see a exclamation mark, but not necessarily, because it's also used in, well, we'll get to that in a second, but you have this merge, the imperative. So that is the imperative merge. Conjunctive, conjunctive, or subjunctive. Yeah. Subjunctive. Subjunctive. This is also the mood in different languages, Latin languages. Here you have the conjunctive as semerg. I want to go home. So I want to go home. That's the subjunctive. Then participle, am mers acasă la 9. I went home at 9. Here about the participle, mers is the participle of a merge. You have different usages for this, but we'll talk about them in a second. Conditional, condițional, aș merge acasă, so I would go home. That's the conditional. Then the gerund, George mergând acasă a văzut luna plină. Yes, you can have ing forms in Romanian. Mergând is basically the ing form, but it's not used like in English for present tense or past tense or future tense or so on. Mergând is actually used to describe how George was walking or what he was doing when he saw the full moon. So, but this would be translated as George walking home, he saw the full moon. Right, and then we have supine, which is an absolute madness of a mood. That's why I'm gonna underline it with red here. If you look at the example here, antrenorul ne-a dat de mers 20 de kilometri. The coach gave us to walk 20k. This is luckily quite an easy to translate phrase. However, most of the times it will not be so easy. This means the coach has given us to walk 20k, but actually what it means here, this demers, is that the reason or the scope is to walk. Again, as confusing as it seems, yes, you're right to be confused. It's difficult to learn mood, and I'm not going to go too much in depth on this because it needs to be explained in detail, and we'll have a video about that. Right, so those are all the moods in terms of examples. I will mention very briefly what they mean as well. So we're talking about the infinitive, and this is the default form of the verb, the one like I call it previously a title, and it's the first thing you should probably know when you learn any kind of grammar topic in A1. Infinitive can be short or long. Yeah. So you have short infinitive like here, merge, or a merge, the long infinitive. It is used as a title, as a placeholder that describes an action. Nothing more, nothing less, just that. The indicative is, like here, all the tenses are actually indicative. I wrote it here as well, so you know. All those tenses are under the indicative mood. So basically everything from present, past, and future. So there could be a lot to talk about, and this is, I would say, something that you would learn from A1 to B1, as it's mentioned in the previous video, right? We have here A1 to B1. So it's continuous work to have with the indicative, and it's basically everything. Like, you can think about indicative as the easy tenses, right? The ones that you think about or you talk about, not by default, but on a day-to-day basis. Imperative, this has only one form, and it's used just in second person, yeah, singular or plural, and it's again very, very easy. You learn it under A1, and it's the way you kind of give advice, you give a command, you ask somebody to do something in a more assertive way, if you want. You give, you shout maybe at somebody. So it's demand. That's what imperative, as the name's suggesting. A1. After probably learn the present tense. So conjunctive, here you have two as well. You have the present and the perfect. You have present conjunctive, which is like here, se merg, and also you have perfect conjunctive, which is să fi mers. That is quite tricky, and you learned it further on in your studies, probably towards the second half of B1. But the present conjunctive is something that you should learn probably right after you have felt the confidence of speaking in present tense, and you will learn it under A2. It's a mood that describes a lot the feeling, the opinions, the personal preference of the speaker. That's what conjunctive is. And it's also referred as subjunctive, and so on in other Latin languages. The participle is actually with a lot of other meanings as well, as adjectives, for example, and as we talked earlier, the supine uses participle, but it's mainly used for the past. So participle is a mood that describes something that's, imagine in English you have participle as well, and it's something that's done. It's a perfect, it's called perfect participle, and it's something that's finished. It's something that's definitely finished. By the way, I will make this as a group because this is both under conjunctive, and then participle, something that you would also learn under A2 or late A1, late A1, A2, after you get a bit more comfortable with present tense and other vocabulary topics. Let's put here, yeah, like A1, 2. It depends on you really how you choose to go around it, because you can either learn conjunctive first and then participle, or the other way around. So let me put this, yeah, those two can change places in your journey. Conditional, this has two as well, present conditional and perfect conditional. While the present conditional is quite easy, although you might get your head around it a bit slower, because the auxiliaries like ash, I, are quite similar to the past tense. It's not a difficult mood to learn. It obviously, as it says, it's conditional, so it's something that could happen or would happen if a condition is met. And this is the present conditional, and for that probably A2 needs to be around your A2 level. And then the perfect conditional, which is not super difficult, but you need to be confident in your skills with present, with the present conditional, with the past, with the conjunctive as well. You need quite a few prerequisites in order to learn the perfect conditional. That's why I put it here under B1. It's aș fi mers rather than aș merge, which in English is I would have gone. Then the gerund is only one form here. It's not something that is commonly used, and it's not something that will be in your day-to-day speaking, but it's something that when you get confident in most of the other ones, you want to learn it because it's common in writing and in like natives would use it as well. So it's something for B1. The difficulty of it, like to learn how to make it, is really not that difficult. Finally, talking about supine, this is a mood that, I mean, with supine, it's, you have to know the prepositions because it's, as you see here, it's a preposition plus participle. This is something that you want to learn. If earlier we in the tenses video we spoke about early levels, this I would say it's late, B1, or later. It's something that you want to learn after you have gone through most of the grammar and you just want to get used to speak closer to a native. It's not something that makes sense for many people. It's something to do with the state or the meaning, the mean of doing something, the reason, the purpose, but it's quite tricky, and we will have a video about it where we speak more. So yeah, I would say learn everything else and then focus on supine. That's how it goes. Cool. And finally, last but not least, we talk about the difficulty of how difficult it is to learn all of them. We will stick to the same idea, which is about time, right? So easy, medium, and difficult. The only difference is this is not only about time but also about the nuances regarding each mood specifically, because as I said, this is not only about where you put a verb on a timeline, it's also about what you want to say with it. Gives a different mood to the speech, right? Different feeling to the speaking. So these three will be judged not only about the time that you need, which should be very similar, maybe a bit more, because obviously they are not just one tense like here. Many of them are multiple. However, I'm going to judge each of them under the subcategory. So for infinitive, I'll take short and long. For imperative, there's just one person. For conjunctive, I'll take 2. Participle 1, conditional 2, gerund 1, supine 1. Although I think you know already where the supine is going to. So, time needed, nuances, and also understanding exactly what it means. All those three will be evaluated when I talk about difficulty. So here we go with the infinitive, short or long. Both of them are extremely easy, and maybe the short one will need a bit more time, but it's still easy because it's basically more or less one usage with pot. Now the indicative, this just because of the time really and the details from before is difficult. Then the imperative, that one is very easy. Just need to know two forms of it and you're good to go. Also the times you use it, quite clear. It's quite clear when the use cases when you use it, obviously. is quite clear. Then conjunctive. Okay, to get your head around the present conjunctive, it takes a while. The base usages, I would say, they are medium because it's quite clear. But then, like the more time you spend actually learning conjunctive or subjunctive, however you want to call it, the more usages you find. But I will keep it under medium because to get your head around it, it's quite clear at the very beginning. And then the perfect conjunctive. This one is difficult, even though it's not super complex compared to the present conjunctive. You need to know the participle. You need to know a bit of conditional. It's quite a tricky one, the perfect conjunctive, to get your head around. And you need to spend time, and you need to find use cases. That's the trick about it. Then we have the participle, which the only reason I'm gonna give it medium is because there are many variations of the participle, and many people really struggle to conjugate correctly, because there are many ways to put a verb into infinitive, and there are many irregularities in Romanian, and that's why you will find it quite time consuming to memorize the right conjugation for the participle. But other than that, like the usage of it, also when you use it as an adjective, it shouldn't be very difficult. It's very similar to English because there is participle in English. Conditional present. This one is, I don't know if to give it easy or medium. It's quite a hard one because the usages are very straightforward. They are very similar to English. However, I would give it medium just because there is this auxiliary that is very similar to the past, and many people struggle to find the difference and to say the difference. So that's why I'm gonna give it medium. And then the conditional perfect. This one is a bit tricky as well, but I think I'm gonna put medium. Only because it's extremely similar to English. Like whenever you say I would have done, or I would have gone, or I would have left, it's exactly that in Romanian. And also the modal verbs in English are very close to this conditional mood in Romanian. So medium for both. Gerund, this one is, I think, easy. Because you don't need to. Okay, maybe I'll put medium. Sorry. There are only two ways to create the gerund, but you need to spend more time to understand when to use it. It's no easy. I think it's easy. It's definitely easy. If you go to B1, you should find it easy to learn gerund. And then maybe the only struggle would be with gerund to actually put it into your active vocabulary, but other than that, it's quite easy. And then supine, I mean, this is boss level. This is the boss level mood. If you know how to use supine correctly, it's basically you're fluent. I have to say, if you're expert in supine, you're fluent in Romanian. Nothing else. So this is about it, guys. This is how to use the moods. This is the tier list as well. From A1 all the way to B1. There are obviously some tricks, and it's harder to speak about the tier list as a whole for moods because you have so many other subcategories in here. Also, do not forget that under tenses, those tenses are actually part of the indicative, and you have, for example, the conditional or the conjunctive that use present or perfect, right? So it's quite tricky to find a way to categorize this as a whole mood, and you have to take them separately. I will make a tier list, or even maybe let's not call it a tier list. I will make pathway for you to learn the tenses, the moods, and the voices, which we have down below. After we finish with all three of them, in order for you to understand when to learn each individual one. because there is a pathway, there is a very specific pathway that I suggest to my students, and it just jumps from one to another, and it just makes sense. It's a logical way if you come from speaking English to speak into Romanian. That was it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching this. I know it was a tricky one. Moods, tenses, and voices are a very twisted chapter in Romanian, but verbs without understanding about tenses, moods, and voices will not really make any sense, because you will end up with some random form of a verb and you'll not know what happens with them. Or for example, as you learned today, you will not know what the speaker wants to say in that specific scenario. Next in this series, we'll talk about how to combine and intertwine those three subjects: the tenses, the moods, and the voices. And we will hopefully help you in your Romanian learning, because without connecting them and knowing where to put them in your journey, it will be quite tricky for you to understand why even we're talking about moods, tenses, and voices. Now, if you feel like you want a specific topic to be discussed in the Romanian Academy, this season is exactly for that, where we talk about tips, tricks, and analysis. Drop a comment down below where you express your opinion or suggest a topic, and we will consider it for a future video. Other than that, please drop a like and subscribe. Share it with your friends if you feel like you have people that want to learn Romanian. And if you feel like this wasn't clear enough, there are Calendly links in the description where you can book an appointment with me, and I can explore this topic more with you and help you with your Romanian learning. Well, I guess that's it for today. So, la revedere!